The vast circular chamber of Nexus Prime's Grand Council Hall stretched before Ambassador Jake Morrison like a living organism. Alien perches dotted the tiered seating, some filled with water for aquatic delegates, others crackling with contained energy fields for gaseous beings. The air hummed with translation devices and environmental controls, creating a subtle background symphony to the diplomatic theater about to unfold. Jake straightened his formal Earth Diplomatic Corps uniform and adjusted the small pin bearing humanity's insignia, a stylized blue and green Earth with a single orbiting star. The weight of 200 years of human interstellar exploration rested on his shoulders today. This was humanity's first formal audience before the Galactic Council, an unprecedented diplomatic opportunity that had taken decades to secure. Readings, normal. Ambassador, Captain Lisa Rodriguez said quietly at his side, her eyes sweeping the chamber with professional detachment. As head of security for the human delegation, she maintained a deceptively relaxed posture that belied her combat-ready status. Atmosphere composition stable. No detected weapons beyond the standard ceremonial items. On Jake's other side, Dr. Peter Chang frowned at his datapad. The scientific advisor had spent the past month preparing evidence and presentations to showcase humanity's technological and cultural achievements. "I've updated the terraforming presentation based on yesterday's briefing," he whispered. "If they raise ecological concerns, we're prepared." Jake nodded, his expression revealing nothing of his inner tension. "Remember," he said quietly, "we're here as equals seeking mutual understanding, not supplicants begging for approval." The delegation had rehearsed this moment exhaustively. First contact with the Galactic Council had occurred 30 years ago, and for 3 decades, humanity had operated on the fringes of galactic society, learning the complex interstellar politics that govern 217 known sapient species. Today marked their formal petition for recognized status and treaty privileges. A resonant tone echoed through the chamber, signaling the session's commencement. The massive doors at the chamber's far end parted, revealing the council triumvirate, the 3 rotating members who served as the executive branch of galactic governance. Jake recognized them immediately from briefings. Counselor Thrick, an insectoid, being whose iridescent carapace caught the light as he moved. Mandibles clicking in what humans had learned was a sign of anticipation. Prime Minister Glubb, a massive dolphinic entity suspended in a hovering tank of specialized liquid, whose translated voice always carried a melodic undertone. And Elder Cessatar, a crystalline intelligence whose faceted body refracted light in patterns that formed a secondary communication layer for those who could interpret them. "Delegation of Terra, approach the speaking circle," announced the chamber's automated translation system, its neutral voice echoing. Jake led his team forward, feeling the eyes of hundreds of alien representatives upon them. The speaking circle, a platform elevated slightly from the chamber floor, activated as they stepped onto it, illuminating with a soft blue glow that indicated their microphones and translation systems were now active. "Honorable members of the Galactic Council," Jake began, his voice steady. "I bring greetings from Earth and her colonies. We come seeking—" "The Council recognizes Counselor Thrick," interrupted the automated system, cutting Jake off mid-sentence. Jake's diplomatic training kept his expression neutral, but his mind raced. Being interrupted before completing even the formal greeting was unprecedented and potentially a grave insult. He glanced at Captain Rodriguez, who had tensed slightly. Counselor Thrick's mandibles clicked rapidly as he rose. "Esteemed colleagues," the insectoid began, compound eyes gleaming under the chamber lights. "I move that we dispense with ceremonial proceedings and address the human problem directly." The word hung in the air. Problem. Jake felt a chill run down his spine. This was not the diplomatic reception they had anticipated. "The motion is recognized." Prime Minister Glubb's translated voice rippled through the chamber. Let the record show that this emergency session has been convened to address violations of Galactic Charter, Sections 12.7, 15.3, and 22.9 by the species designate human. Dr. Chang shifted uneasily beside Jake. "Ambassador," he whispered. "They've already classified this as an emergency session. This isn't a diplomatic welcome, it's a hearing." Jake nodded almost imperceptibly. He had suspected as much the moment Thrick had spoken. This wasn't the carefully negotiated formal introduction they had prepared for. It was a setup. The Council will hear evidence of human transgressions against galactic peace and stability. Elder Cessitar's crystalline form vibrated, creating a voice that sounded like wind through chimes. "Ambassador Morrison, your delegation will respond to these charges." Jake stepped forward, years of diplomatic training kicking in. "The Earth delegation requests clarification on the nature of these alleged violations and formal documentation of the charges. Documentation has been transmitted to your delegation's devices." Thrick clicked dismissively. "The violations are as follows: illegal colonization of protected stellar bodies, including the planets designated NH-2292, your New Kansas, BX-771, your Liberty, and GC-112, your Hope. Ecological terrorism through unauthorized terraforming, and subspace pollution through unregulated warp technology." Jake maintained his composure as he quickly scanned the documents appearing on his datapad. These were serious accusations, carrying penalties that could include trade embargoes or even military action against Earth and her colonies. More concerning was the fact that these documents appeared to be extensively prepared, with evidence gathered over years, all while the Council had been ostensibly engaging in friendly diplomatic exchanges with Earth. "Honorable Council," Jake said carefully, "these are serious charges that require careful consideration. The Earth delegation requests a recess to properly review this unexpected documentation." "Denied," Thrick clicked. "The emergency nature of these violations requires immediate address." Jake exchanged a glance with Rodriguez and Chang. They had all been in enough diplomatic situations to recognize when the rules were being manipulated. This wasn't just unusual. It was a deliberate ambush. "Very well," Jake responded smoothly. "In that case, I request that our scientific advisor, Dr. Peter Chang, be permitted to address the technical aspects of these allegations." After a moment of silent communication among the triumvirate, Elder Cessitar's facets flashed in what Jake recognized as reluctant agreement. "The human scientist may speak." Dr. Chang stepped forward, his datapad ready. Despite the pressure, his voice remained calm and authoritative as he addressed the chamber. "Esteemed council members, regarding the colonization allegations, Earth conducted extensive surveys of these systems before establishing settlements. Our records indicate no designation of protected status for these worlds at the time of colonization. In fact," he continued, bringing up documentation on the chamber's holographic display, "our initial surveys show these worlds were categorized as Class 7 uninhabitable planets, precisely the classification that permits terraforming under Charter Section 14.2. A murmur ran through the chamber as various delegates conferred with their advisors. Chang continued methodically. "As for the ecological concerns, our terraforming processes utilize the Nakamura-Sato method, which preserves 98.7% of indigenous microbiota while making the atmosphere breathable for carbon-based life. This method was developed specifically to comply with Council conservation standards." Thrick's mandibles clicked rapidly in what humans had learned was a sign of agitation. "The surveys you reference were conducted by human scientists, not Council-approved xenobiologists." "With respect, Counselor," Chang replied, "Earth submitted these surveys to the Science Directorate upon first contact, as required by protocol. We received no objections at that time." "Those submissions were preliminary and pending formal review," interjected Prime Minister Glubb, his tank bubbling intensely. No final approval was granted. Jake watched the proceedings carefully. The council was employing a common bureaucratic tactic, claiming that proper procedures hadn't been followed while simultaneously ensuring that following those procedures was impossible. He had seen similar tactics in Earth's diplomatic history, but never expected such transparent manipulation from the supposedly enlightened Galactic Council. Regarding the subspace pollution charges, Cheng continued undeterred. Earth's warp technology adheres strictly to the Alcubierre-Martinez principles endorsed by the Council's own Technology Standards Committee. Our emissions are well below the thresholds established for nascent spacefaring civilizations. Those thresholds, Elder Cessitar chimed, were established for limited exploratory vessels, not for the extensive colonial network humanity has established. As the technical debate continued, Captain Rodriguez leaned close to Jake. "Ambassador," she whispered, her eyes never leaving the various council security personnel positioned around the chamber. "Something's wrong. The Rielian delegate is transmitting on an encrypted frequency." Jake nodded slightly. The Rielians, a species known for their predictive mathematical abilities, were typically neutral in council politics. Their sudden involvement suggested deeper currents at play. "Can you intercept?" he asked quietly. "Working on it," Rodriguez replied, discreetly adjusting settings on her wrist device. "Security protocols here are complex, but I'm using the backdoor our intelligence team identified in their quantum encryption." As Dr. Chang continued his methodical defense against the scientific charges, Jake maintained his diplomat's facade while his mind raced through possibilities. The council had clearly planned this ambush carefully, which meant they had an endgame in mind. Given the severity of the charges, that endgame likely involved significant restrictions on human expansion, possibly even forced abandonment of established colonies. The debate stretched on for hours, with various council members rising to support the charges or request clarification. Dr. Chang, despite his careful preparation and extensive knowledge, found himself repeatedly stymied by procedural rulings and technical objections that seemed designed to invalidate human evidence regardless of its merit. By the time the first day's session concluded, the pattern was clear to Jake. This wasn't a hearing. It was a performance designed to create the appearance of due process while marching inevitably toward a predetermined verdict. As the human delegation was escorted to their assigned quarters within the Nexus Prime Station, Captain Rodriguez confirmed Jake's suspicions. "I managed to decrypt part of the Rielian transmission," she reported, once they were alone, and had swept the room for surveillance devices. It referenced probability calculations for human response scenarios to various punitive measures. "They're not just planning to find us guilty. They're already discussing enforcement actions." Dr. Chang slumped into a chair, exhaustion evident on his face. "They didn't engage with a single piece of scientific evidence we presented. It was like arguing with a wall programmed to say denied, regardless of input." Jake moved to the window, overlooking the vast expanse of Nexus Prime. The station was a marvel of cooperative engineering, with architecture reflecting dozens of species' design philosophies merged into a harmonious whole. It was meant to symbolize the best of galactic civilization, cooperation, shared knowledge, mutual respect. "The tragedy," Jake said quietly, "is that I genuinely believed in what the Council claimed to represent. Earth spent decades preparing for this moment, adjusting our technologies and practices to align with their stated values." "What's our next move?" Rodriguez asked, her military training seeking clear directives. Jake turned from the window, his expression resolute. "We continue as planned for now. Tomorrow, we present our formal defense and request arbitration under charter provisions for disputed colonial claims. Dr. Chang, focus on the technical inconsistencies in their accusations. Captain, continue monitoring communications. I want to know what they're saying when they think we can't hear." "And if they continue this farce?" Chang asked. Jake's eyes hardened slightly. "Then we implement Protocol 7. Rodriguez straightened at the mention. Protocol 7 was one of several contingency plans developed by Earth's Strategic Command for worst-case diplomatic scenarios, unlike the others, which involved various forms of retreat or compromise. Protocol 7 was fundamentally different. It was a calculated show of force designed to radically alter diplomatic dynamics. "Are you certain?" she asked quietly. "Not yet," Jake replied. "But send the preliminary signal to Earth. Tell them to begin preparations, just in case." As Rodriguez stepped away to transmit the encrypted message, Jake returned his gaze to the stars, visible through the station viewport. Somewhere out there, the colonies of New Kansas, Liberty, and Hope continued their daily lives, unaware that their futures were being decided in this distant chamber. Beyond them, Earth itself, still humanity's heart despite 2 centuries of expansion, awaited word of their reception among the galactic community. Jake had always imagined this moment differently. He had envisioned earnest cultural exchange, scientific collaboration, perhaps even celebration of humanity's accomplishments against significant odds. Instead, they faced a tribunal that had reached its verdict before hearing evidence. The second day of hearings proceeded much like the first. The human delegation presented detailed rebuttals to each charge, only to see their evidence dismissed on procedural grounds or technical objections. Additional council members rose to support the original charges, some citing incidents or data that the human delegation had never seen before and had no opportunity to investigate. During a brief recess, Captain Rodriguez provided another update. "I've intercepted more communications. The Vex Confederation representatives are discussing trade embargo provisions with the Zintari Empire. They're planning to cut off all commerce with human colonies." "And the Rielians?" Jake asked. "They've completed probability models for military action," Rodriguez replied grimly. "They're calculating casualties for various intervention scenarios." Dr. Chang shook his head in disbelief. "Military action? For what? Even if we did violate some technicality regarding colonial permits, that hardly justifies armed intervention." Jake considered this information carefully. "It's not about the colonies," he said after a moment. "It's about what humanity represents. We expanded faster, adapted more quickly, and integrated alien technologies more efficiently than any species they've encountered in recent history. We're a disruption to the established order." "So this is about control," Rodriguez observed. "It always is," Jake replied. "And I believe it's time to acknowledge that diplomacy alone won't secure human interest here." He turned to Rodriguez. "Send the confirmation signal for Protocol 7. Full implementation." Rodriguez nodded and discreetly transmitted the coded message to Earth. When the session resumed, Jake altered his approach. Rather than continuing the point-by-point defense that was clearly futile, he began asking pointed questions about council procedures, historical precedents, and the selective enforcement of regulations. His inquiries, while perfectly polite, highlighted inconsistencies in how similar situations had been handled with other species. "Is the council aware," Jake asked during one exchange, "that the Zintari terraforming of Bellex 4 in the 2280s involved complete extinction of all native flora, yet received expedited approval?" The question created visible discomfort among several delegations. Elder Cessitar's crystalline form flickered in patterns that indicated agitation. "The situations are not comparable," Thrick clicked dismissively. "The Zintari had established historical claim to the Bellex system. A claim," Jake noted calmly, "based on a single exploratory mission 4 centuries earlier, during which no settlement was established nor resource development attempted." Such exchanges continued throughout the day, with Jake methodically exposing double standards and preferential treatment within council operations. He never raised his voice or displayed frustration, maintaining perfect diplomatic composure while systematically undermining the moral authority of the proceedings. By the session's end, the triumvirate appeared increasingly uncomfortable, and several previously vocal council members had grown notably quiet. The chamber adjourned with an announcement that final deliberations would occur the following day. Back in their quarters, Jake briefed his team on the next phase of their strategy. Protocol 7 is now active, he informed them. Earth has acknowledged and preparations are complete. Tomorrow, we end this charade. What should we expect? Chang asked, concern evident in his voice. Something unprecedented, Jake replied. Captain Rodriguez will coordinate with our ship during the night. Dr. Chang, I need you to transfer all our scientific data, especially the evidence the Council refused to consider, to my personal data pad. You're not planning to, Chang began. Withdraw from Council proceedings? Jake finished for him. That's exactly what I'm planning, but not before we make certain things absolutely clear. The night passed with quiet, efficient preparations. Captain Rodriguez coordinated secure communications with their ship, the Intrepid, while Dr. Chang compiled and organized the extensive scientific and diplomatic records they had accumulated. Jake spent hours reviewing classified intelligence reports and finalizing his approach for what would undoubtedly be a historical moment in human interstellar relations. The third day dawned with an air of finality. The council chamber filled early, delegates eager to witness the conclusion of the human hearing. Rumors had spread throughout Nexus Prime about the unusually contentious proceedings, drawing increased attention from species not normally concerned with administrative matters. When the session was called to order, the triumvirate took their positions with an air of solemn authority. Prime Minister Glub's tank bubbled as he prepared to speak, likely to announce the commencement of final deliberations. But before he could begin, Jake stepped forward alone onto the speaking circle. Captain Rodriguez and Dr. Chang remained seated, a break from protocol that immediately caught the attention of the chamber. Point of order, Jake announced, his voice calm, but carrying clearly through the vast space. Under Charter Section 5.3, I invoke the right of immediate address prior to deliberations. The request was procedurally sound and couldn't be denied without explicitly violating the charter that the Council claimed to uphold. After a moment of silent communication among the triumvirate, Elder Cessitar's crystalline form flickered in acknowledgement. The human representative may address the Council, the elder chimed reluctantly. Jake stood tall, his posture perfect, his expression composed. Honorable representatives of the Galactic Council, I stand before you today not to continue our defense against the charges presented, but to make a formal announcement on behalf of Earth and all human colonies. A murmur ran through the chamber at this unexpected turn. After careful consideration of these proceedings and thorough review of Council operations, Earth hereby withdraws from all provisional treaties with the Galactic Council and declines further participation in membership processes. The chamber erupted in shocked exclamations. Species with vocal communication created a cacophony of sounds, while others communicated their surprise through light patterns, pheromone releases, or electromagnetic pulses that set translation devices struggling to keep pace. Councillor Thrick rose immediately, mandibles clicking rapidly in agitation. This is highly irregular. The human delegation cannot simply withdraw while under investigation for charter violations. Jake smiled slightly. With respect, Counselor, we absolutely can. As a non-member species under provisional treaty status, Earth retains sovereign right of treaty withdrawal with due notice. Consider this notice duly given. This is outrageous, Prime Minister Glub's tank bubbled furiously. The Council will not recognize this attempt to evade justice. Justice, Jake repeated, his tone still perfectly measured. An interesting choice of word. Prime Minister, let's discuss justice. Jake activated his datapad, and the chamber's holographic system displayed a series of documents and data streams. These are Vex Confederation survey records from 2275, classified under Council Security Directive 1192, Jake explained calmly. They clearly show that NH-2290, what we call New Kansas, was surveyed and designated as uninhabited and suitable for colonization. The VEX submitted this report to the Council 5 years before humanity's arrival in the system. The VEX representatives shifted uncomfortably in their environmental pods. And here, Jake continued, displaying another document. We have Reelian probability analysis logs showing a 99.7% likelihood that the Council was aware of human settlement patterns, but deliberately withheld objections until our colonial infrastructure reached Phase 3 development. The calculated optimal timing for maximum leverage against Earth's interests is highlighted here. The Reelian delegation's color-shifting skin turned a deep purple, a sign of extreme embarrassment or distress in their species. Most interesting, perhaps, Jake said, displaying a third set of data. Are these atmospheric readings from Titan Environmental Monitoring Station in our own solar system? They show trace elements consistent with Council surveillance drones dating back 40 years, well before official first contact. These drones employed cloaking technology, prohibited by the very charter sections we're accused of violating. The chamber had grown deadly quiet. Jake's revelations were not just embarrassing. They were potentially devastating to the Council's moral authority and the carefully constructed narrative of benevolent galactic governance. How did you obtain classified Council records? Elder Cessitar demanded. Crystalline structure vibrating in patterns indicating alarm. That's an excellent question, Jake replied. One might ask how a non-member species supposedly operating on the galactic fringe could access such well-protected information. The answer is simple. The Council's security isn't nearly as impenetrable as you believe. Jake displayed a final document, a complex chart showing quantum traffic analyses of Council communications networks. For the past decade, Earth has been quietly mapping discrepancies in your security protocols, not to exploit them for harmful purposes, but as a precaution against exactly this type of situation. This is unprecedented, Thrick clicked furiously. The human delegation is openly admitting to espionage against the Council. We're admitting to due diligence, Jake corrected calmly. And the evidence we've gathered points to an inescapable conclusion. The Galactic Council is not the impartial governing body it claims to be. It is an instrument of control, wielded by established powers, to maintain dominance over emerging civilizations and exploit resources that should be equitably shared. Prime Minister Glubb's translation system barely kept pace with his rapid vocalizations. These accusations are slanderous. The Council has maintained peace among hundreds of species for millennia. Peace, Jake acknowledged with a nod. But not justice, not equality. Your peace is built on subjugation of younger spacefaring civilizations and systematic marginalization of species that don't conform to your preferred development patterns. Jake deactivated his datapad and looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes, or sensory organs, of various delegations directly. Humanity no longer recognizes your authority, he stated clearly. We withdraw from all agreements, provisional or otherwise, effective immediately. Earth and her colonies will determine their own path forward among the stars. The chamber descended into chaos. Delegates rose from their seats, some shouting objections, others conferring urgently with their advisors. The triumvirate attempted to restore order, but the shock of Jake's announcement and the damning evidence he had presented created a momentum that even their authority couldn't immediately contain. In the midst of the tumult, Jake nodded slightly to Captain Rodriguez, who touched a control on her wrist device. The chamber's communication system suddenly activated, overriding the Council's control protocols. A calm female voice, Rodriguez's, echoed through the space. Attention all Nexus Prime delegations. This is Captain Lisa Rodriguez of the Earth Diplomatic Security Force. Please be advised that the following fleets have just emerged from subspace at coordinates surrounding this station. The chamber's main view screen, activated without Council authorization, displaying real-time sensor data from Nexus Prime's outer perimeter. The image showed dozens of spacecraft of various designs and origins, arranged in precise formation around the station. Wanderer clan vessels, Eternal Horizon, Stardancer, and Void Seeker, Rodriguez announced, as the screen highlighted three massive ships of distinctive nomadic design. Reef Builder living ships, Coral Ascendant, and Abyssal Dream. Granite Folk, Heavy Cruisers, Mountain's Wrath, and Stone Patience. Moth Collective Hive ships, Luminous Swarm, and Wing Pattern 17. The list continued, identifying nearly 30 vessels representing species that the Council had historically marginalized, restricted, or simply ignored. Nomadic cultures without permanent planetary bases. Species whose biological or technological development patterns didn't align with Council standards. Civilizations deemed too primitive for full membership, despite achieving faster-than-light travel. As the reality of the situation dawned on the Council members, Jake spoke again, his voice cutting through the stunned silence that had fallen over the chamber. Earth has spent the past decade building relationships with species the Council dismisses as irrelevant. We've established trade agreements, cultural exchanges, and mutual defense pacts, all outside your regulatory framework. What you see before you is not just a fleet, but the foundation of a new interstellar community. Jake stepped off the speaking circle and moved to stand beside Rodriguez and Cheng. I hereby formally announce the establishment of the Terran Alliance, an association of sovereign species committed to equitable exchange, mutual respect, and genuine cooperation. Membership is voluntary, governance is distributed, and no single species holds veto power over others. The significance of this moment wasn't lost on anyone present. In 3 days, the human delegation had transformed from supplicants seeking Council approval to the architects of a competing galactic organization with substantial military backing. "This is insurrection," Councillor Thrick declared, mandibles clicking so rapidly they blurred. "The Council will not stand for this challenge to galactic stability." Jake turned to face the triumvirate directly. "It is not insurrection, Councillor. It is evolution. The galaxy is vast enough for multiple approaches to interspecies cooperation. Those who find value in the Council's structure will remain. Those who desire an alternative now have one. And if the Council deems this alternative a threat to peace," Elder Cessitar chimed ominously. Captain Rodriguez stepped forward. "Then the Council would be advised to review the strategic analyses prepared by your own Rielian probability experts," she said calmly. "The combined capabilities of the Terran Alliance fleet currently match or exceed Council peacekeeping forces in this sector. An armed conflict would result in unacceptable casualties on both sides, with a statistical probability of Council victory calculated at less than 40%. The Rielian delegates conferred urgently, their color-shifting skin rippling through patterns that indicated intense calculation. After a moment, their lead representative rose. "The human security officer's assessment is accurate," the Rielian confirmed reluctantly. "Our models indicate that forced suppression of this alliance would require resources currently committed to 3 other sectors, creating unacceptable vulnerability." Prime Minister Glubb's tank bubbled furiously. "This is blackmail! Coercion through threat of force!" "Not at all," Jake replied calmly. "We have no intention of attacking Nexus Prime or any Council facility. We simply insist on our right to chart our own course without interference. The fleet is here to ensure that right is respected during this transitional period." Dr. Chang stepped forward, addressing the chamber for the first time since Jake's announcement. "I would like to add that the Terran Alliance Charter, copies of which have been transmitted to all delegations, includes provisions for scientific cooperation that far exceed the Council's knowledge-sharing frameworks. All member species retain intellectual property rights while gaining access to shared research databases and collaborative development resources. This statement created visible interest among several delegations, particularly those representing research-focused civilizations that had struggled with the Council's restrictive information-sharing policies. "The Council session is temporarily suspended," Elder Cessitar announced abruptly, facets flashing in patterns that indicated urgent internal communication among the triumvirate. All delegations are instructed to remain on Nexus Prime, pending further announcements. As the triumvirate departed the chamber through a private exit, the remaining delegates broke into dozens of small groups, urgent discussions filling the space with a cacophony of translated voices. Several representatives immediately approached the human delegation, some with expressions of interest, others with evident concern. Jake addressed them with the same diplomatic poise he had maintained throughout the proceedings. Representatives of all species are welcome to review the Terran Alliance Charter and discuss potential membership or observer status. Dr. Chang and Captain Rodriguez will be available for technical and security consultations, respectively. Over the next 48 hours, Nexus Prime became the center of a diplomatic revolution. The Council, after emergency closed-door sessions, emerged with a series of concessions and reform proposals clearly designed to counter the Terran Alliance's appeal. But the damage to their authority had been done. Within a week, 17 species had formally withdrawn from the Council and requested Alliance membership, with dozens more indicating interest or requesting observer status. Most significantly, the Vex Confederation, one of the Council's founding members, announced its intention to maintain dual association with both organizations, effectively legitimizing the Alliance's status as a peer to the Ancient Council rather than a rebellious faction. 10 days after his dramatic announcement, Jake stood on the observation deck of the Intrepid as it prepared to depart Nexus Prime. The station, once the unquestioned center of galactic politics, now shared that distinction with the hastily established Alliance Coordination Hub aboard the massive Wanderer clan vessel, Eternal Horizon. Captain Rodriguez joined him at the viewport, watching as Allied ships maneuvered in complex patterns around the station. Earth Central Command reports that Protocol 7 has exceeded all projected outcomes, she informed him. The diplomatic landscape has been permanently altered. Jake nodded, his expression thoughtful. It was never about replacing the Council entirely, he said. Some species genuinely benefit from their structured approach. It was about creating space for alternatives, for different visions of how diverse civilizations might interact. The Council underestimated humanity, Rodriguez observed. They underestimated everyone, Jake corrected. The nomadic clans, the hive minds, the silicon-based intelligences, all the species they dismissed as irrelevant or problematic. They failed to recognize that diversity isn't just a challenge to be managed. It's a resource to be valued. Dr. Chang approached, datapad in hand. The Alliance Charter has been ratified by 23 species, he reported. The distributed governance model is operational, with regional coordination hubs established in 7 sectors. And Earth status? Jake asked. Exactly as you specified, Chang replied with a slight smile. Equal membership with the same voting weight as all other signatories. No special privileges despite our role in formation. Jake nodded, satisfied. The principle of genuine equality had been non-negotiable in his vision for the Alliance. Earth would lead by example, not by force or manipulation. There will be challenges ahead, he acknowledged. The Council won't simply accept this new reality without attempting to undermine it. We'll need to prove that our model is sustainable, that cooperation based on mutual respect rather than hierarchical control can work on a galactic scale. At least we'll face those challenges on our own terms, Rodriguez said. The Intrepid's engines hummed to life as final departure preparations were completed. Through the viewport, Jake watched as Allied vessels adjusted their positions, creating an honor corridor for the human ship's departure. It was a gesture of respect that transcended the diverse biological and cultural differences of the participating species, a symbol of the new era they were collectively creating. As the Intrepid pulled away from Nexus Prime, Jake reflected on the journey that had brought humanity to this moment. From humanity's first tentative steps beyond their solar system, 2 centuries ago, to this pivotal realignment of galactic politics, the species had maintained its fundamental traits: adaptability, determination, and an unwavering belief that they deserved a voice in shaping their own destiny. The stars stretched before them, countless worlds waiting to be discovered, cultures to be encountered, knowledge to be shared. For the first time, humanity and their allies would explore that vast frontier, not as supplicants to an ancient order, but as architects of a new approach to interstellar cooperation. The galaxy stood poised on the threshold of transformation, and Jake Morrison, diplomat turned revolutionary, had helped push open the door.